Welcome everybody back to Boost in Motion, guys. And today we gonna talk about it. I was asked, Boost, which car is better to build, a B58 or a VR30? Guys, that's this video. Let's hit that intro. Welcome everybody back to Boost in Motion, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Thank you. Welcome everybody back. Welcome everybody back to the channel. If you already subscribed to the Boost in Motion channel, that means you guys have already hit the like button. So thank you guys, and I appreciate you guys for always coming back and hanging out with your boy Boost. But then also, if you're new to this channel and you find my video to be very informative, subscribe to my Boost in Motion channel and check out the other content that I drop. You might really like it. But anyway, guys, let's jump into it because I'm very informative and like to help people. So this question was asked to me, Boost, I want to either get a B58 or VR30. What is the price breakdown and what would be the yielding results? So in this video, I'm going to talk about 400 wheel, 500 wheel, 600 wheel, 700 plus, right? And what are some of the requirements and kind of rough estimate what it's going to cost. I'm not going to have any graphs or anything like that. I already kind of like know the prices of these different parts, and it kind of just gives you a condensed, reason. But anyways, let's jump into it. So Boost, I want to make 400 wheel horsepower. Which one is better? Well, B58 and VR30 both can do that with a simple flash tune and or proper custom tune. I would recommend getting a custom tune. This is when you either have a street tune and or dyno tune where they can calibrate your car for the conditions outside. That's what your tuners can do. Flash tunes is mainly just for the European BMW market, but I really would say stay away from them because, well, first thing, they're pretty reliable, but they don't give you as much power, right? And that's just the way they set up. They make these custom flash tunes for anyone to use across the world. So they're usually more on the conservative side. But if you want a custom app for your conditions, your altitude, for your fuel quality and everything, it's recommended to get a full-fledged custom tune. Boom. Everything else stock on both platforms. All right, Boost. Well, that's the 400 wheel horsepower. Let's talk about 500 wheel horsepower. Well, let's start with the longer list. That's going to be the VR30. Now, you're going to need to change the fuel. Depending on where you live, you might run 91, 93. Will you get 91? Will you get that amount of power out of 91, 93 fuel on a VR30? At this current moment, I'm gonna break it down in this video, but bear with me. You're going to need to run a couple of things. You're going to have to change to E85 fuel. The reason being is E85 fuel is just better fuel to use. You can run more advanced timing. It's just better for more performance. That's it. But you just can't switch over to E85 fuel on the stock fuel system. So there's some requirements. Number one, you're going to need a low pressure fuel pump. This isn't the one that's in the fuel tank. It's about $200. You're going to need a high pressure fuel pump, right? This is the one that sits on the fuel rail. This one, because we have a direct injection system on this car, right? And that could range about $1,300 plus. I would recommend going overkill for this, only for the reasons when you want to go higher power. So if you're going to spend money once for the high pressure fuel pump, get the biggest one that's possible that you can get, okay? Cool. 3, you're going to need a downpipe, right? Downpipe is pretty much removing the catalytic converters. This allows the turbos to spool up faster and hold consistent higher peak wheel horsepower at the higher RPM. 4, you're going to need an heat exchanger. Reason being is, as you do a couple pulls on this car isn't designed to be a race motor. So it's going to heat soak and pretty much lose power really fast. So for you to make 500 wheel, you need consistent cooling capacity. And 5th, you're going to need a CATBACK exhaust. I would recommend anything 2.5 inch or 3 inch, but 3 inch will be definitely preferred. And finally, 7, you're going to need a flex fuel kit. Flex fuel kit is so that you can read the amount of E85 fuel in your gas tank. From what I can see, tuners usually want you to be right around E50 to E60, but mainly E60 percentage, 60% ethanol. That will get yield you 500 wheel horsepower, and checkmate on that. And of course, the tune. Anything that I've stated here, you'll already have it from the pre-existing list. So then you would add a tune. Okay, cool. And that should give you 500 wheel horsepower. Now, what about the B58? Well, B58s don't have to do much at 500 wheel horsepower. One thing they can do is run E85, same thing as us. So run 85 fuel. They do not need a low pressure fuel pump upgrade. But they will, depending on the year of the B58. There's a TU pump that usually comes, I think it's the 2020s and up or the 2019s. It's a larger OEM housing, high pressure fuel pump. That's all they need. So E85 fuel, high pressure fuel pump, and downpipe, right? And a flex fuel kit. Four things. But here's the thing: the high pressure fuel pump you can get for like $500. Remember, I just told you the other one for the other car is like $1,300. You get it for $500 brand new, or you could probably get them used or salvaged. So it's relatively easy, and you can install this high pressure fuel pump on the OEM map. Nothing needs to be tweaked or changed. You can add a high pressure fuel pump for the VR30, but they need some tuning onto it. Just being quite honest with you guys. So let's just leave that out of there. But you can add the high pressure fuel pump, TU pump. You need downpipe once again for quicker spool up and holding high peak wheel horsepower, and a flex fuel kit to read the 85. But here's the thing: you don't need to run like E60 mix. Like you can run, from what I've been reading, E40. Some people say even E30, but I'll say E40, E50 mix. So a smaller percentage of E85 fuel. Okay, so that would, excuse me, guys, that will yield you 500 wheel horsepower. Now I'm gonna put what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna put a little asterisk for both platforms. For the VR30, new to our platform, we have air-to-air kits. These air-to-air kits are sold by two companies right now, Bonnie and Clyde and Elite Performance. Pretty much, both platforms use an air-to-water kit to cool down the air charge, right? But recently now, at least in the VR30 platform, if we go air-to-air, we realize that we have higher wheel horsepower, and the car actually just remains more consistent with power. So we've been seeing going air to air on 93 can yield you 500 wheel horsepower, or 495, really close, but about 500 wheel horsepower. And you can do that on 93 fuel. So you can actually skip a lot of having to run E85 fuel and just go 93 fuel with, of course, your CATBACK exhaust heat exchanger, but none of the fuel stuff, and just go air to air. And you have consistent performance, cooler air charge, and 500 horsepower without straining the fuel system. Um, with with 500 wheel horsepower too, well, also on the VR30, I thought this is another, again, this is the asterisk, because I know I'm confusing you guys, but I just want to make it a little bit easier. You can also hit 500 wheel horsepower with a hybrid turbo. So if you go with like an RT tuning turbo, or even a pure turbo, you can hit 500 wheel horsepower once again on stock fuel system. It's still not really recommended to do it on pures because it's a little bit different. It'll be a little laggy. But on RT turbos, you still have the same spool up performance, but just a little bit more volume of air. And you can hit about 500 wheel horsepower once again with your same modifications. But once again, you're dropping like $4,000. So, and for the B58, you can also go with a hybrid turbo too up here, run that on 93 and do the same thing. Now, we're still at 500 wheel horsepower right now, right? I'm going to give you the price breakdown. You're spending about $4,700, guys. About $4,700 just to make 500 wheel horsepower with E85 fuel system and your catback exhaust and a tune, right? If you go to the B58, you're only spending 24 or $2,500, about $2,600, about almost half the price to yield 500 wheel horsepower. So you can already kind of see that you're saving a bit more money going with the BMW, and you're gonna have the similar power and performance. Now, this is where things change. What if you want to make 600 wheel horsepower out of your VR30? Well, remember, anything from the 500 up and below is already included. So, as an addition, like already spoke to you, a hybrid turbo, a pure turbo. Um, Go and still your same fuel system stuff. Hopefully, you got the largest fuel pump at this time. I mean, largest high pressure fuel pump at this time. And boom, I would also add this part into this because depending on if you go to the track, I would say it's recommended that you get a drive shaft. If you're gonna be any hard launching, I'm talking about like at a drag strip, your stock drive shaft just not gonna be able to take the amount of abuse. It's two piece. It's gonna have its own issues. So I would recommend getting a drive shaft. That's an additional right now. That's gonna be additional about $4,000 to $5,000, and the drive shaft is about $800 to $1,000. So that brings your total cost to make about 600 wheel horsepower plus somewhere around mid 600. But just to get to hit that number, close to 10,000, about $9,300. But that's the most $10,000. We're not talking about installation prices and everything like that. Now, if you want to make 600 wheel on a B58, well, here are some of your options. Once again, a hybrid turbo, like a pure turbo. Same thing here, E85 and everything. But they also make transmission tunes. It's recommended to go with a transmission tune for the B58, and that's relatively affordable thing. It's I think $400 or $500. It's not that expensive from XHP. So you go with a hybrid turbo. You only need one turbo rather than two, just one. So that additional turbo is only about $2,500, and then you get the transmission tune. So another $3,000, and you're right around $5,600 for about 600 wheel horsepower. Remember, this is also an E85, right? This is fully 85. This isn't 93. You're not gonna hit 600 wheel on 93 fuel for like a pure turbo or a RT turbo. You're not gonna hit that on 93 fuel. Remember, these hybrid turbos are still stock frame turbos, just with upgraded turbines for anyone who made it to this part. So all in all, at this part, we can compare the price. About $10,000 invested for the VR30 and about 56, almost $6,000 invested for the B58. And you're going to yield very similar results. Cool. At this point, for both platforms, I recommend you stop. I recommend you stop because anything past this point is a full transmission build, a full motor build, a huge replacement turbo, a complete large turbo set, even injectors. You just keep going down the rabbit hole. But let's just quickly talk about it. VR30, you want to hit 700 wheel horsepower. You now have to do a transmission build. You're going to have to do a motor build, and you're going to need to go with additional cooling. I'm talking about if you added the air to air kit, maybe you added larger air to water intercoolers, a fender tank. You add more cooler capacity to the system. Also, because you have a larger turbo, or you either wanted to go with like a larger turbo at this point. There are a couple of turbo systems that are out right now that are coming out. You have Drop Air LLC, and you also have Bonnie and Clyde, and also AMS. That also make those three companies make their complete large like Garrett turbo systems. So for you to run that 700 wheel, you're gonna need you're gonna need a bigger turbo, and you're gonna need larger injectors for more fuel. So just understand you're gonna need a motor build. So right around that point is where you gotta walk away. There's gonna be so much things, and you're gonna find the weak point around 700 wheel horsepower. It's just more finicky. Now, the B58 Trans Build, even though the ZF transmission is really good, it's right around 650 pounds of torque to the wheels that it'll start slipping. The B58 is right around 550 to 600 wheel torques to the ground too. So it's a little not as strong of the transmission, but both ways you're gonna have to upgrade it. It's also recommended for the B58 anything past 600 wheel horsepower that you get a manifold swap. Their intake manifold is an air to water intercooler integrated, but after a certain amount of psi, it starts to crack, and this is going to give you a ridiculous boost leak. So you're going to have to invest in a upgraded air to water air cooler, pretty much intercooler. You're going to need a larger, high pressure fuel pump. Literally at this time, it is recommended to get a larger high pressure fuel pump. You could actually still run the TU OEM pump on like a pure turbo. It's stated like you can actually just do. You don't need a complete larger fuel pump. But even then, at least you know what I'm talking about here. At this point, you go with a complete larger high pressure fuel pump. Once again, more cooling capacity, heat exchangers. You can add heat exchangers point, and you may only need a mild motor build because the B58 is already closed deck and it has pretty strong rods. So it is recommended that you go with an upgraded piston. But at this point, if you're cracking open a motor, also do the rods, do the bearings, do whatever you need to do within that system at that point and fully build the motor. So you can see 700 plus, 800 plus, and even 900 plus, almost 1,000 wheel horsepower builds with building the motor, building the trans, and going with a full large turbo. So at that point, you could hit about 900 to 1,000 on a B58. It is very common for you to do so. It's going to cost you some money, but you can. VR30 right now, we don't have a lot of people in that 800, 900,000 wheel category. It's just not a thing, because we don't have enough, at least the companies that come on now, we're just now getting these full larger turbos to the systems now. So it's going to take a while for us to get those units out there and people who have their motors already ready with rods and pistons to see where we can actually go. Can we be part of that 800, 900 to 1,000 wheel category? We have a handful of people who's at like 700, 800, even 900, but I still haven't even seen 1,000 yet for the VR30. So once again, it's still our uncharted territory because we just don't have the parts for that exactly yet. So all in all, both ways, 700 wheel horsepower is going to cost money. But if you take a look back at the 600 wheel horsepower, for about half price and about a lot less money and time and parts invested, you can make 600 wheel. And I went to the track. I got to see what a pure turbo B58. I got to look up and see what these just pure turbo B58s do with fueling systems compared to a pure turbo VR30. And I'm, as much as I have an infiniti platform here, and be quite honest with you guys, just keep it 100 and honest with you guys, the max effort VR30 Q50 Q60 on E85 is a low 10-second car at the track. It's trapping between 130 to 134, 135, but it's right around that territory. A pure turbo B58 340 or 440 is trapping 135 to 140. So nonetheless, there's going to be more results. It has a higher trap speed than the VR30. And it's just going to do low, once again, low 10s too in the B58 3 Series. I'm only talking about the B43 Series, 4 Series. I'm not talking about the Supra. Will do low 10s all day. And shout out to Hussein, he hit 9s on the stock frame turbo, pure turbo. So it's definitely a thing. Their times are going to be a bit lower, and their trap speed is going to be a little bit higher. So all in all invested, which one would you guys really recommend in choosing? I'm not going to tell you on video, but just choose before all the information I gave you. But outside that, guys, you have a good morning, good afternoon, good night. Thank you for banging with your boy Boo. Sorry for making this video super long. Hopefully, I can help you guys along your motor build, even no matter if it's a B58 or if it's a VR30. Outside that, guys, you already know what to do. Hit me up at boostinmotion on IG, Facebook, and boostinmotion at gmail.com. Otherwise than that, guys, appreciate it. You guys have a good day. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Do appreciate you guys. Love you guys very much. You can also check out the 2 links I posted for some of my other videos. Also, on top of that, if you want to purchase some Boost in Motion merch, definitely check the link that I posted also. And finally, if you've been watching all my videos and you enjoy them, please hit the link to subscribe to my YouTube channel.